Hey everyone, welcome to a new unit on World War One. Some of you war buffs out there are super excited about this, I'm sure. And we're going to get in depth into World War One, but our first reading is about the causes of World War One. We got to understand the origins behind it before we can really get into some of the nitty gritty of what happened. So anyway, this video is on imperialism, the first cause of World War One. But before we get to talking about imperialism, I want you to see a map of Europe in 1914 first. You need to understand this map. Here are the major players. The most industrialized nation in the world at this time is the United Kingdom or Great Britain. They are industrialized and they have a far flung empire. They have control of countries all over the world. The second most industrialized country in the world is probably the United States, but of course, we're doing our own thing over in the Western Hemisphere. We will get into the United States' role in World War One, but the United States plays very little of a role in the origins of World War One. The next most industrialized nation in the world is the German Empire. We're going to understand the break between Germany and Austria a little bit later, but for now, just understand this is Germany here. They're a little bit larger at this point in time than they would be later or even today. They are very industrialized, but they do not have nearly the worldwide empire that a Britain or France do. And so one of the things they're doing is trying to play catch up. Another major European power at this point is Russia. Russia has a vast empire as well, although a lot of it is Siberia and rather uninhabitable places up in the northern parts of Russia. But still, they have a lot of resources available to them. Then you have a couple others that we can talk about. Spain, of course, we know that they are on the decline. They've just lost a war to the United States, and they've been losing their world empire. And so they are just basically concentrating on their own country at this point. Then you have the Austria-Hungary Empire. Now, Austria has been kind of a Central European power for quite some time, but it's losing ground now to Germany. Germany was able to unite as a country in 1871, and part of that was at the expense of Austria-Hungary territory. And so, however, Austrians are German-speaking peoples, and so there's a alliance really between Austria-Hungary and Germany. Italy is also a brand new country in 1914. They had only become a country in 1870. And so they are also behind in the in industrialization and in imperializing parts of the world. The Ottoman Empire is known as the sick man of Europe. They actually were at their height in the 1800s, but they have been declining for quite some time. And they have been losing some territories as nationalist movements in what's known as the Balkan Peninsula. These countries are known as the Balkans. As they kind of have resisted the Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman Empire has been shrinking, and into that void, Austria, Hungary, and Russia both want to exert their influence and take some of these territories that the Ottoman Empire has been losing. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of what the map of Europe looks like heading into World War I. So now let's talk about the first main cause of World War I, and that is imperialism. So you have to understand that, remember, because of industrialization, European countries felt like they had to get markets for their products as well as places where they can get cheap raw materials from. And led by Britain, European countries attempt to take over any part of the world that is less industrialized, that can't fight back, etc. And so if you'll notice Britain here is in this kind of reddish color, and you'll see that the territories they control in 1914 include Canada, India, Australia, many parts of Africa. They've got a vast empire going on. France has a pretty good sized empire as well. Western Africa, they even have a few parts in the Caribbean here. They have a little section of Indochina here. So they've got a pretty good sized empire as well, though nearly not as large as Britain's. What you especially should pay attention to here, though, is Germany. And Germany has very few territories. And that's problematic for the third leading industrial power in the world. They feel like in order to keep up with a Britain and a France, they need more territory. And it's this desire to take over new territory, this imperialism, this quest for imperialism, that Germany feels threatened by Britain and France, and Britain and France feel like Germany's going to come try to get their territory. It's one of the reasons why, if you'll notice, there's very little territory over here that is under the control of Europeans, and that is because of the Monroe Doctrine. Remember, the United States issues the Monroe Doctrine, and even in the early 1900s, Teddy Roosevelt issues the Roosevelt Corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, saying, Europe, stay out of Latin America, and if you have to intervene, we'll intervene so that you don't intervene. Britain supports the United States' claims to the Western Hemisphere because they don't want Germany getting it. Now, they couldn't necessarily, I mean, you could say, well, why doesn't Britain want parts of Latin America? Here's the thing, they already have a vast empire. Do they really need any more territory to try to control? It'll just mean more troops everywhere. And so Britain is very supportive of the United States, keeping other countries out of Latin America. It actually benefits them. So Germany believes imperialism is the key to keeping up with its European rivals and also to continue its industrialization process. If you remember, Germany had wanted the Philippines as well as areas around in the Caribbean near the United States Panama Canal. Um, but of course, Teddy Roosevelt thwarts that. All right. Um, Make sure you understand that these maps and the fight over territories around the world is the first key cause to a cause of World War I.